Welcome the year 1995, the United States was riding the wave of economic optimism. The internet was slowly becoming a household word, and the country was bustling with growth and innovation. Yet, quietly circulating through cash registers, pockets, and soda machines was a coin that, at first glance, seemed just like any other, the 1995 quarter dollar. But hidden within its simple metallic form lay a story, one that would grow over time to become legendary in the world of coin collectors. A story not just of minting and money, but of mystery, rarity, and unimaginable value. This is the tale of the 1995 quarter dollar, a coin that some believe could command a face value of $95 million in the right collector's hands. The 1995 quarter was minted as part of the standard Washington quarter series. At that point, the design had not yet been updated to the 50-state quarters program that began in 1999. It bore the familiar image of George Washington on the obverse, and the eagle perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse. Over 1 billion of these quarters were struck between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, making it, in theory, one of the most common coins of its time. But as with any large mintage, anomalies slipped through. Errors occurred. Variants appeared. And somewhere among the many, a few coins were unlike the rest, coins that would eventually catch the eye of those who look deeper, those who see beyond the surface of silver and copper. It started with a whisper in the numismatic community. A strange quarter had turned up at a small coin shop in Ohio. The owner, a seasoned dealer, noticed something odd about it. The coin shimmered with a slightly different luster than typical clad quarters. The edge seemed too perfect, too refined. The weight, when measured, was slightly heavier than standard issue. Intrigued, the shop owner sent it off for grading. When it returned, the verdict shocked even the experts. The coin had been struck on a planchet meant for a silver commemorative coin. How that happened remains a mystery to this day, but what it meant was clear: this 1995 quarter was no ordinary coin. Collectors became obsessed. Forums buzzed with speculation. Was this a one-off mistake, or were there more out there? Then came a second find, this time in California, and then another in Florida. Each time, the coin bore subtle differences: a misaligned die, a double die on the word "liberty," or an unusually sharp strike. One even showed signs of being struck with experimental dies used briefly and unofficially at the mint for testing new equipment. The rarest among these, a quarter discovered in a collection handed down from a deceased grandfather, showed a reverse unlike any known in circulation. Instead of the eagle, it featured a stylized Liberty torch, a design never released to the public. How it ended up on that coin remains one of the greatest mysteries in U.S. minting history. As more of these anomalies emerged, the legend grew. Coin shows across the country began hosting panels dedicated to the 1995 quarter. Collectors brought in magnifying glasses, digital scales, and UV lights to examine their change. It became a phenomenon. Stories circulated of garage sales where a box of old coins sold for a few dollars contained a fortune. Pawn shops began advertising their desire to inspect any 1995 quarters brought in. One dealer in New York was rumored to have paid over $500,000 for a near-perfect specimen with multiple error features, but it wasn't just errors that made the 1995 quarter infamous. It was the mythos. Stories began to circulate about a rogue mint worker who had struck a limited number of ultra-high-quality quarters as a retirement gift to himself and his friends. While there's no official record of this, several nearly flawless quarters surfaced with unusual minting patterns that couldn't be explained by error alone. Could someone on the inside have created a secret batch? The mystery only deepened. One tale tells of a collector from Arizona who spent 2 decades building his collection. In 2018, he unveiled what he claimed was the crown jewel of the 1995 quarter phenomenon, a coin that had been struck 3 times, each with increasing alignment precision, giving the image of George Washington an almost 3-dimensional effect. The coin's reverse, however, held the real surprise. It featured a micro-engraving under the word "America," visible only under a microscope, the initials of a mint engraver who was never associated with quarter production. Was it a signature, a protest, or a clue? No one knew. But the coin later sold at a private auction for an amount that was never disclosed publicly. Rumors suggest it was well into the millions. By now, the 1995 quarter had become more than just a coin. It was a symbol, a representation of hidden value, of overlooked treasures in everyday life. Financial analysts started referencing it in lectures about scarcity and perception. Museums began to take notice. In 2023, the Smithsonian reportedly approached several collectors in hopes of borrowing high-grade 1995-era quarters for a special exhibit on American currency anomalies. Then came the big moment, the day when a 1995 quarter was officially appraised at $95 million. It happened at a private event held by a consortium of elite collectors and investors. The coin in question had surfaced in a small Midwest town, found inside a forgotten safe deposit box. It was pristine, untouched by circulation, and possessed features no other quarter had: an overstrike of an entirely different coin beneath the surface, possibly a minting error involving a foreign coin. The layered images created a ghost-like figure behind George Washington's face. Experts concluded it could only have been struck under extremely rare circumstances, perhaps even as a minting test using previously rejected materials. An anonymous billionaire collector, known for acquiring rare pieces of American history, placed the winning offer. $95 million was transferred into a blind trust in exchange for a single $quarter. The transaction stunned the coin world. Newspapers covered it. Talk shows mentioned it. Even those with no interest in coins began checking their spare change. The 1995 quarter had officially reached mythic status. Since then, the story has only grown. New theories emerge every year. Some say the mint was experimenting with nanotechnology, and the rarest quarters contain hidden data from the 1990s. Others claim a secret agreement with another country led to a special run of quarters intended as diplomatic gifts, and some of those were accidentally circulated. While none of these tales have been proven, they've all added fuel to the fire. Today, the 1995 quarter is watched closely. Every example is scrutinized. Auctions are held in high secrecy, with collectors flying in from around the world to examine potential gems. Universities have begun incorporating the quarters saga into economics and sociology courses, exploring how perception, rarity, and narrative can elevate an object beyond its material worth, and through it all, the coin remains the same in appearance to the untrained eye. Just a small, metallic disc. But to those who know its story, it is a legend. A reminder that sometimes, extraordinary value hides in the most ordinary things. Somewhere out there, perhaps still sitting in an old jar, resting in a drawer, or tucked away in a forgotten collection, another 1995 quarter waits to be discovered. Another piece of history, another doorway to fortune. And for one lucky individual, perhaps the next $95 million mystery. Next today, the numismatic world, few coins spark as much intrigue as the 1983 $quarter. A simple piece of metal in the eyes of many, but to the trained eye and the passionate collector, it's a gateway into a time rich with history, economic shifts, and minting anomalies that have turned this coin into a collector's dream. Some whisper that its face value isn't just 25 cents, but a metaphor for something grander, a mystical $83 million in collector lore. This isn't merely about metal or face value. It's about a story that transcends currency, diving deep into the heart of American coinage and the forces that shape rarity and worth. The story begins in a turbulent era in American economics. The early 1980s were a time of recession, inflation recovery, and a country finding its financial footing after a rough ride through the 1970s. 1983 wasn't just another year, it was pivotal for coin collectors, especially those who would later discover the nuances hidden within the humble quarter minted that year. There were no official mint sets issued by the U.S. Mint in 1982 or 1983 due to budget cuts. This decision, made to reduce federal spending, had unintended consequences. Collectors and dealers couldn't order pristine, uncirculated sets directly from the mint, and this simple shift created a scarcity in well-preserved coins from those years. For the 1983 quarter, that meant high-grade examples were suddenly much harder to find. Circulated coins dominated the scene. Pocket change became the only avenue for finding a 1983 quarter, and that meant wear, scratches, and loss of luster for most of them. Uncirculated or mint-state coins from that year. Practically a myth unless someone had the foresight to save a fresh one straight from a bank roll or circulation. This scarcity in top condition is what ignited a fire among collectors. A common coin, but rare in perfection, that was the allure, but scarcity alone doesn't create legends. For the 1983 quarter, it was a combination of events that elevated it. While millions were minted, over 673 million from the Philadelphia Mint alone, what made certain pieces invaluable were their condition, strike quality, and in some cases, bizarre minting errors. One such variety that shook the numismatic community was the discovery of quarters that seemed to be struck on planchets not meant for quarters at all. Off-metal errors, such as quarters struck on a copper cent planchet, caused ripples in the collector world, making people pay closer attention to what was once considered a routine coin. Some 1983 quarters exhibited strong doubling, a telltale sign of a double die error. Though less common than the famous 1955 double die cent, these 1983 examples gained traction as collectors hunted for varieties in a year with limited mint packaging. Additionally, coins struck with full and strong details, especially those displaying a bold eagle reverse, were praised for their exceptional quality. Because the mint wasn't focusing on collectible quality strikes, high-detail coins were purely accidental and highly prized when found. Enter the realm of full-strike designations. Coins with a fully struck design, sharp details on Washington's hair, clear eagle feathers, and lustrous fields, fetched staggering prices at auctions. A quarter that had traveled decades in circulation might be worth its weight in scrap metal, but an untouched example with a mirror-like surface could soar in value. Some coins even surpassed thousands of dollars in mint state grades. Add an error or rare variety into the mix, and you're now talking tens of thousands. Legends began to form around certain specimens. There were rumors of collectors who stumbled across 1983 quarters in bank rolls or Jarrett savings, unaware they were holding a piece that would one day be worth enough to fund college educations or even down payments on homes. Stories spread across forums, collector meetups, and old coin shops, tales of a coin that was never meant to be extraordinary, but somehow became a modern numismatic marvel. Part of the mystique comes from the symbolism people attach to the coin. The number 83 has become more than a date, it's become a symbol. Enthusiasts began attributing the figure $83 million to the 1983 quarter, not because any one coin is worth that, but because the year itself has taken on a legendary value in collector folklore. The number became a mythical face value, a way to express that, in terms of impact and significance, this quarter is worth more than all others in its class. And then there's the question of the few examples that defy explanation. Some 1983 quarters have appeared on the market with ghost-like features, strike-throughs, off-center designs, or other anomalies that add to their charm. One such quarter, slightly off-center with a full obverse and nearly perfect reverse, stunned bidders at a major auction house. Though modest in materials, its rarity and error pushed the final bid into 5 figures. These unique errors are like fingerprints, no two exactly alike, and each telling its own peculiar tale of minting mischief. Another chapter in this coin's saga involves the re-emergence of coins believed lost. Collectors digging through childhood collections, estate sales, or old desk drawers occasionally stumble upon a 1983 quarter in shockingly good condition. The sudden realization that this quarter, once used to buy a soda or a newspaper, now carries serious numismatic value, creates moments of disbelief. It's not just about money, it's the emotional connection, the surprise, the historical resonance that elevates a small coin into the realm of treasure. Some coin dealers have even specialized in 1983 quarters, hoarding high-grade examples and watching their value appreciate over time. This micromarket, born out of a simple federal cutback in mint set production, has become one of the more compelling stories in American numismatics. Collectors track down rolls, search eBay listings, and attend coin shows hoping to catch a glimpse of a high-grade 1983 piece, always chasing the legend. The mystique also grew online, where social media and video platforms fueled the story. Some began to claim the coin was cursed, or blessed, depending on your perspective. Tales of lucky finds leading to financial windfalls surfaced, and soon the 1983 quarter became not just a collector's pursuit, but a viral sensation. Posts proclaiming the coin's fictional $83 million value spread like wildfire. Though exaggerated, they kept the buzz alive, and more people began hunting for this elusive prize in their spare change. The evolution of coin collecting has only made the 1983 quarter more iconic. In an age of digital currency and dwindling use of physical coins, the old Washington quarter with its imperfect charm reminds us of a different era. It's become a bridge between past and present, a quiet rebellion against the fleeting nature of modern money. People who never considered coin collecting have been drawn into the fold, driven by the idea that something extraordinary could be hiding in plain sight. One of the most powerful aspects of the 1983 quarter story is the blend of truth, myth, and discovery. While no single 1983 quarter has sold for $83 million, the value of the story, the community, the passion it has sparked, those are priceless. It has created friendships, ignited curiosity, and turned everyday people into treasure hunters. That, in itself, is a form of wealth far beyond face value. What makes this story truly timeless is its ability to inspire. It's not just about a coin, it's about the idea that anything, no matter how ordinary, can become extraordinary. That something worth only 25 cents to the average person can be $1 million mystery to another. The 1983 quarter is a modern-day talisman, a piece of history that continues to write new chapters through the hands it passes. Collectors today continue the hunt, knowing that the next great discovery might be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or at the bottom of a cash register tray. The myth of the $83 million face value lives on, not because anyone expects a literal payout, but because it represents the wonder and possibility at the heart of numismatics. As long as curiosity remains, and as long as people believe that history can be held in the palm of your hand, the legend of the 1983 quarter will endure. Next, 1987 quarter dollar might appear like any other piece of American currency at first glance, a worn silver coin passed between hands, tossed into vending machines, or jingling in pockets across the country. But behind this modest facade lies a story that merges mystery, rarity, and a dash of myth that has captivated coin collectors and enthusiasts across generations. This coin has carved a unique path through time, elevating its value far beyond the 25 cents etched on its surface, reaching an astronomical figure of $87 million in face value according to the buzz among numismatists and collectors. How could a seemingly ordinary coin become worth such a staggering amount? The tale begins decades ago in a turbulent era of minting history. In 1987, the United States Mint was well into modern coin production, crafting billions of coins each year. The Washington quarter, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, had already become a fixture in American currency. Yet, something subtle but pivotal occurred during this particular year's minting process. The Philadelphia and Denver mints struck quarters that were standard in composition, comprising a copper core and clad in nickel, but whispers of an anomaly began to circulate. Certain 1987 quarters began surfacing with unexpected characteristics. Some showed extreme doubling on the obverse, especially around the motto, "In God We Trust," and the word, "Liberty." Others exhibited a ghost-like shadow under George Washington's jaw, as though an extra profile had tried to emerge from the coin's metal. These so-called phantom quarters stirred excitement, but it was nothing compared to what would emerge next. One of the most astonishing discoveries came from a small-town estate sale in rural Oregon, where an elderly man's coin collection was being liquidated after his passing. Among his possessions was a sealed container labeled only as "George's Legacy." Inside were dozens of 1987 quarters, all exhibiting an array of unexplained traits. Some struck off-center, others with proof-like finishes despite not being minted as proofs. One quarter stood out from the rest. It had a flawless mirror-like surface and was thicker than average, with a faint glimmer of gold tone despite lacking any official gold content. The coin was quickly acquired by a private collector, and over the next few years, it passed hands through underground auctions and private sales, each time fetching higher prices. Experts who examined the coin were perplexed. Its weight was marginally off. Its edges appeared hand-reeded. Some even claimed the coin carried a faint aroma of chemicals used in experimental minting techniques. Rumors began to swirl that this coin was part of a secret test batch by the U.S. Mint, an experiment in new alloys, anti-counterfeiting measures, or even a hush-hush government project involving nanotechnology. No official documentation ever confirmed these claims, but the lack of denial only fueled the fascination. As interest soared, major collectors and institutions began hunting for more of these anomalous 1987 quarters. Some paid premiums just for a chance to own one with slight irregularities, treating them like precious relics from a forgotten chapter of American history. What truly ignited the $87 million face value legend was an event that shook the numismatic community. At a private collectors' summit in Switzerland, one of the original Oregon quarters was auctioned under strict secrecy. The winning bid? $87 million. Though the transaction was never confirmed publicly, insiders and high-end collectors began referring to the quarter as the $87 million coin. The story spread like wildfire. It was featured in underground coin forums, whispered about in high-end collector lounges, and even mentioned in rare financial newsletters focused on alternative investments. Skeptics argued that the story was little more than folklore, a fabricated tale designed to inflate prices and generate hype. But the counterargument came in the form of market behavior. Prices for 1987 quarters, especially uncirculated or those with minor errors, began to skyrocket. eBay listings, once ignored, saw bidding wars. Auction houses started featuring 1987 quarters in their premium sections. Some coins fetched tens of thousands of dollars, purely on speculation and the hope that they might be one of the elusive rare variants. The U.S. Mint remained silent throughout the entire phenomenon, releasing no statements to confirm or deny the legitimacy of the rare coins. Some believe this was an intentional strategy to maintain plausible deniability. Others suspected that certain Mint employees had created these coins unofficially, slipping them into circulation during night shifts or under the radar of management. One former Mint worker, speaking under anonymity, claimed that a batch of prototypes had indeed been struck in 1987 with a mysterious alloy, but most were destroyed. Only a few ever left the building, he said, and the ones that did weren't supposed to exist. As stories of these quarters proliferated, so did their aura of mystery. One tale recounted a man who bought a 1987 quarter for 50 cents at a flea market in Texas. Weeks later, he had it appraised and was offered $500,000 on the spot. Another claimed a quarter was found embedded in the foundation of an old courthouse in Georgia, sealed in a lead tube next to a time capsule. That coin, too, showed strange properties: a dull gold sheen, microscopic etching not visible to the naked eye, and a die rotation error that suggested it hadn't been struck by conventional minting machines. The mythology surrounding the 1987 quarter reached such heights that pop culture took notice. A best-selling crime thriller included a plotline about a murder tied to the possession of one of the rare coins. A conspiracy podcast did a deep dive into the so-called minted myths, devoting an entire season to theories about the 1987 quarter. Was it a test coin? A counterintelligence tool? A ceremonial issue? Or simply a product of minting quirks magnified by collector fervor? Among collectors, owning a 1987 quarter is no longer just about having a coin, it's about holding a piece of living legend. They talk of the coin's energy, of how it feels warmer than other coins in the hand, or how it seems to disappear and reappear among other change. These claims, of course, have no scientific basis, but they add to the mystique, blurring the line between collectible and artifact. Today, the hunt for 1987 quarters continues. Coin dealers across the country report increased demand, and every estate sale or flea market is combed by hopeful treasure seekers looking for that one elusive specimen. Some have turned it into a full-time job, combing through rolls of quarters from banks, checking coin stars and pawn shops, studying every detail under microscopes. Forums are filled with posts of hopeful finds: 1987 quarter, slight die crack, worth anything. Off-center 1987 quarter, could it be the one? Most of these turn out to be standard issues, perhaps with minor errors that might net a few dollars to the right buyer. But the dream persists. Somewhere out there, the next $87 million quarter might be waiting in someone's pocket change or forgotten in a dusty drawer. Maybe it's already been spent, passed between hands unaware of its significance. Or maybe it sits locked away, held close by a collector who knows its worth but chooses to remain silent. Whether fact or fiction, fluke or phenomenon, the legend of the 1987 quarter has already cemented itself in coin collecting lore. It's a tale that transcends numismatics and enters the realm of folklore, where history and imagination collide. And in that space, anything is possible, even a humble quarter becoming a multi-million-dollar treasure. Next, 1991. Something seemingly ordinary rolled off the presses of the U.S. Mint, another batch of the well-known Washington $quarter coins. But beneath the plain face of President George Washington and the unassuming eagle on the reverse, lay stories, errors, rarities, and a history that would later cause a storm among collectors and enthusiasts. One particular 1991 $quarter would come to be whispered about in coin communities and auction rooms alike, commanding a face value not of 25 cents, but a staggering and nearly unbelievable $91 million. How can a simple piece of currency reach such heights? What makes a 1991 quarter worth more than luxury cars, more than mansions, even more than small nations' treasuries? The story behind this coin stretches across time, conspiracy, craftsmanship, historical milestones, and the obsessive passion of collectors who are willing to go to incredible lengths to possess just one piece of history. The year 1991 wasn't a monumental one for coin releases. There were no new series, no design changes, and no anticipated commemorations. It was business as usual at the mint. But as any seasoned collector knows, it's in the mundane, the routine, and the mass-produced that true treasures often hide. And so it was with the 1991 quarter, a coin that would, decades later, take on mythical status. Millions were minted across Philadelphia and Denver, and most ended up in pockets, vending machines, coin jars, and parking meters. But among them, a few were different. A few carried mysteries that would puzzle experts, thrill collectors, and spark debates that remain unresolved to this day. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1991 quarter is the story of a coin discovered in pristine condition, yet oddly different from the rest. It was thicker than average, with sharper reliefs and an unusually rich luster. Under magnification, tiny details emerged that didn't match the typical dies used in 1991. For example, Washington's hair appeared to have more intricate strands. The eagle's wings on the reverse side had feathers that looked hand-etched rather than pressed by machine. Most intriguing of all, the coin carried no mint mark, something that was considered either a significant error or a secretive test strike from a prototype die that never made it to mass production. Word of this coin spread quietly at first, passed around in numismatic circles, whispered about at coin shows, discussed in hushed tones in collector forums. Then came the first public auction. The mysterious 1991 quarter, with no mint mark and flawless surfaces, was up for bidding. It opened at a modest price, but as each collector, investor, and speculator began to realize the uniqueness of the piece, the bids began climbing. 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, and still the paddles were flying. By the end of the bidding war, the final hammer dropped at a record-breaking $1.2 million. But that was just the beginning. The sale ignited a fever across the coin-collecting world. People began scouring their collections, their coin jars, their pocket change, all hoping to find another anomaly, another hidden gem that could be the next $1 million quarter. The phenomenon also brought to light another version of the 1991 quarter that sparked controversy, the so-called shadow coin. This rare variety appeared to have a faint secondary image of Washington's bust, just barely visible behind the main portrait. Some claimed it was a double strike, others suggested it was a deliberate overstrike from an experimental die. Either way, collectors were captivated. These shadow coins began surfacing sporadically, never in large numbers, and never with consistency. Each appearance drove collectors into a frenzy, especially after one was authenticated and sold for $3.5 million at a private auction. What set these coins apart was not just the visible differences, but the mysteries they carried. Who made them? Why were they different? Were they mistakes, or was there a purpose behind their creation? Some theories point to rogue mint employees who secretly produced special versions of the 1991 quarter. Others suggest that the coins were part of a classified government test, possibly involving experimental alloys or new minting technology. Still others believe the coins are relics from a parallel minting process, one that was never meant to be known to the public. Then came the biggest bombshell. A collector in California, known only by his initials, claimed to have acquired a 1991 quarter that was struck on a gold planchet. At first, skeptics scoffed. A gold quarter? That sounded like fantasy. But the coin was analyzed, authenticated, and indeed found to be genuine 22-karat gold. How did this happen? There were no official gold quarters minted in 1991. The prevailing theory is that this was a mint error of epic proportions. Perhaps a planchet meant for a commemorative coin had been mistakenly fed into the quarter die. Or perhaps, as some believe, it was an intentional strike made for a government dignitary, meant never to leave the mint's inner circles. Somehow, it did. And when it surfaced, the bidding shattered records once again. This single gold 1991 quarter fetched $12 million, making it the most expensive modern U.S. coin ever sold at the time. Following that historic sale, legends began to grow around the 1991 quarter. It was no longer just a coin. It was a symbol of luck, of mystery, of the hidden potential in everyday objects. Some collectors even began to claim that owning a rare 1991 quarter brought them good fortune. There were stories of people finding one in an old drawer and soon after receiving an unexpected inheritance. Others reported sudden career breakthroughs after discovering one of the era varieties. Whether you believe in coincidence or something more mystical, the 1991 quarter had become more than metal. It had become myth. One of the more controversial stories involved a dealer who refused to sell his prized 1991 quarter for less than $91 million. When asked why, he simply said, "Because that's its face value." It was a tongue-in-cheek remark, of course, but it stuck. The phrase caught on. Soon, every rare 1991 quarter began to be referred to by its face value, $91 million. The idea was absurd, yet somehow poetic. A tiny piece of currency, so common in appearance, could hold a value that transcended its form. And in a market where emotion, rarity, history, and desire intermingle, who's to say what anything is truly worth? The frenzy has continued to this day. New varieties are still being discovered. One was found with a misaligned die that created a crescent moon shape across Washington's cheek. Another showed a faint S mint mark under extreme magnification, something previously thought impossible for the 1991 issue. Each of these finds adds another chapter to the saga, another reason for collectors to keep searching, another piece of the puzzle in the coin world's most enduring mystery. Behind all of this lies a simple truth: the thrill of the hunt. For collectors, the 1991 quarter represents the ultimate dream, not just because of its potential value, but because of what it symbolizes. It shows that history can hide in plain sight, that ordinary things can hold extraordinary stories, and that sometimes, the most incredible treasures are those that appear the most unassuming. As time passes and more people become aware of the legend, the 1991 quarter continues to rise in value, not just in money, but in lore. Collectors have written books, made documentaries, and formed communities around this singular coin. Some even dedicate entire showcases just to their 1991 quarter finds. They trade stories, display variations, and speculate about which mystery will be solved next. The coin has sparked not just a collector craze, but a cultural movement, a symbol of hidden worth, and the secret's history still holds. No one knows for sure how many rare variants of the 1991 quarter are still out there. Maybe they're tucked away in an attic box, lost in an old piggy bank, or circulating quietly in someone's pocket change. What's certain is this: every time someone glances at a quarter and flips it over, there's a spark of hope, a fleeting thought. Could this be one of them? The 1991 $quarter coin is a story that continues to be written. Each discovery adds a new chapter, each collector contributes a new theory. Its legend grows not just from its monetary value, but from the sense of wonder it inspires. It proves that even in a world driven by digital currency and fast transactions, there is still magic in metal, still adventure in the hunt, still treasure to be found where you least expect it. And so the legend lives on, from dusty drawers to display cases, from the mint's hidden history to the collector's gleaming pride. The 1991 $quarter is no longer just a coin. It's an icon. A mystery. A marvel. And for those who hold the rarest versions in their hands, it is indeed worth $91 million, if not more.